they were at Walgreens, and the woman, a woman from says my name, and I know it's got to be me because she mispronounces it. And who else has a name like mine that you can mispronounce? I mean, I don't know what she said, but I've lived with this name for decades, and so I know, oh, that must be me, especially if I'm sitting around white people. There can't be a white person who has a name that sounds like a mangled Emil Guillermo. So I go to, she says, go to the back. This is sort of like a weird situation. Like I had to go behind the toy aisle or something. They had some secret door. And I go and sit down. I go into this room and we're out of public view. I guess they wanted privacy. And this woman who I just saw go back into the main place where the pharmacy is, because I guess she just got back from lunch. Great. I'm her first appointment after lunch. And she sits me down and she takes out her stuff. And I mean, absolutely no bedside manner, right? This is like mass production. You're getting a vaccine. You're one of the few, apparently. I mean, this is what's scary. I'm one of the few who want a fifth vaccination. I'm one of the few who want a third booster, right? I've had two, right? I had two, and then I had two, and now, so I've had 4 shots. I'm looking for a 5th shot. I got 1 shot for each beetle. Now this one's for me. Had 4 shots. This is my fifth shot. So I'm sitting down, and like I said, this woman has absolutely no bedside manner. I know she just came back from lunch. So it wouldn't have surprised me if she excused herself for burping. Oh, if she burped, I don't know if she'd excuse herself. And she takes out the needle, and then she proceeds to jab it in my arm. Look, I know it sounds like, oh, that just does it. I'm not going to go and get a shot because Emil just told me about his horror story. No. This woman was trying to be responsible. She said, oh, well, you know how it is. Sometimes you get a bad one. And she said, don't worry. We didn't puncture anything. Thank goodness. Don't worry. We didn't puncture anything. Look, see, I drew no blood. And I was just trying to not look, right? I could feel it. Because the moment she went for it, it was like, I could feel it. I said, I let out a groan. Okay, it wasn't that bad. Maybe 3/4 of that. But she just looked at the needle and said, oh, sometimes you get a bad one. So she went away. I don't know what she did. She might have come back with the same needle. I don't know. But she came back with a new needle and she said, look, got a new one. I said, that's not a used one you got, right? I mean, I was really concerned. But she said, oh, no, this is a new one. So she got the new one. And then she did. It was smooth. It was like, right? Like putting it through a pound cake, right? It just went right in. I felt good. And then she says, oh, you know, you're a Moderna and we only have Pfizer. You know, and another woman had taken care of that issue. I said, look, I'm mixing and matching. I'm integrating my vaccines. And besides, this is the Omicron, right? This is the for the new variant. We don't know what kind of variant. A lot of people are saying, I don't want to get anything. I know people who are really smart who say, I'm going to wait for clinical trials. They think they can outsmart everyone. But I said, look, it takes a couple of weeks for it to set, apparently, and then you got like 4 months. I'm going to do some travel. I'm going to get it now. So I got it, and my arm hurts. I didn't get sick. And like I said, the 5th shot, I'm good. So I'm here to tell you, if you're thinking about getting a shot, get it. I mean, don't be afraid. When I was there, people were already talking about flu shots. And they were going to give me a flu shot too. And I said, I'm not going to get a flu shot on the same day because, I just like to linger with my vaccine as it goes through my veins. And then I'll get the flu shot another day, right? I want to savor it. I'm a gourmet booster shot appreciator. I mean, I want to feel it course through my body, and I'll get my flu shot maybe in a week or two. But there are people getting their flu vaccine. No one's. Everyone thinks, oh, I have it already, or I've had it. I've got immunity, or I've already been boosted. I don't need it again. Well, I don't know. I think that's one of the things you got to consider. And I'm going to talk about that today. Welcome to the program. I'm Emil Guillermo. Emil Amok to you. This is Emil Amok's Takeout. Oh, I got vaxxed. Fifth shot. I'm proud to have 5 shots in me. I hope it works. I was checking the Times. The Times has a nice stat sheet that shows how many people died. Only like we're in the 300s. So it's below 400. First time that I've checked, it's below 400, like 3 something, which is good. We're not dying as much, but more people are apparently in Europe, for example. There's a kind of a mini surge in Europe. And people are saying that there could be a surge here in the wintertime if people are going out and enjoying the fall and not vaxxing and boosting for the new variants. Who knows what we're going to see in January or February or even December. I mean, this is October, right? People are out there enjoying football games. People are out there enjoying all sorts of things. I'm doing a staged reading in a theater, but it's virtual. It's not, I mean, I don't get to see any of my cast members. So I'm still not at theaters, but performers, actors, comedians, they're out there. And I'm still holding out. I'm still outdoors. I'm still masked. And I think to be safe, I think we all should be, frankly. So I'm going to lead off talking about that, but I'm also going to talk about the journalist who was killed in the Philippines. I mentioned it yesterday in show 403, the New York Times piece. Talk about it more today because, Bong Marcos has come out and said, yeah, we got to find out more about this. We got to investigate. Which to me sounds like O.J. Simpson saying, we're going to find the real killers. We're going to find the real killers for Percy Lapid, Percival Mombasa. I just think it's a bad sign when you have 2 journalists critical of the Marcos family rehabilitation. You have 2 journalists dead within the first 100 days of Ferdinand Marcos Jr. So we're going to talk about that. I refer to my columns in the Asian American Legal Defense and Education Fund, aldef.org/blog. Also, theinquirer.net, the Philippine Inquirer. I wrote about Filipino American History Month and the Dred Scott decision. And I pulled out a decision written by Justice Roger Taney, who wrote that ridiculously racist Dred Scott decision in 1857. And as a point of Filipino history, this is being Filipino History Month, I wanted to point out that terribly racist Dred Scott decision had as an antecedent the ruling written by Taney in 1840 called U.S. v. Dow, D-O-W, and Dow was a Filipino on an American ship. And I'll read from the case and what Taney wrote. I mean, I boiled it down in my column, But it's interesting to read this. I've had a number of people stop me and say, Emil, you know, I didn't know about Dred Scott and this Dow case. And yeah, if you do, I mean, because Dred Scott was a real terrible case. A freed black slave in Illinois goes back to where his roots were in Missouri. He was from Missouri, went to Illinois. Illinois was free. Missouri, he had to sue for his freedom. That was the Dred Scott case. The decision was, no, you are not free. And the decision was written by Taney. And Taney said it was because African Americans could be citizens, so they had no right, no basis to those inalienable rights that we talk about in the Constitution. Not citizen. Oh, Congress couldn't pass the law saying that Missouri could, make African Americans free. So that's out. But there was this other bit in the Dred Scott ruling that gave Taney the confidence to say, yeah, Dred Scott, he's a slave. He's black. And when you're black, you do not have rights in America. And that decision was U.S. v. Dow, D-O-W. And Dow was a Filipino in America. So we'll talk about that today. Biden in Florida. Did you see him kind of towering over DeSantis? DeSantis, after Hurricane Ian, looked so small. He looks so small and so smarmy. And I just look at DeSantis and I just see the man who would send back legitimately or die. I see a man who would send migrants who are here legitimately and send these people here seeking asylum from Texas to Martha's Vineyard to make a stupid point. That's when you think of Ron DeSantis, think of Martha's Vineyard. That's Ron DeSantis. And so Biden is appearing in Florida, visiting Florida, and he says all the right things like he has the last couple, since Hurricane Ian struck. DeSantis just looks like a lost bureaucrat saying, well, as far as I know, I don't see critical race theory taught here. I don't see, what is Ron DeSantis? He's against critical race theory. He's against anything that might upset the Trump base. That's all he knows. But as far as helping people, as far as showing compassion, he can't do it. What he can do is say, well, I'm going to get FEMA. I'm going to get the feds. He's reliant on the feds. He's reliant on Joe Biden. And remember, back in the spring at that conservative meeting they had in Orlando, the conservative pack, they had the big meeting. DeSantis said, Joe Biden is an enemy of Florida. And you could see Joe Biden today speaking with compassion from the podium, and behind him, there was Ron DeSantis eating his own words. And I have to think that this does not play well. If you're in Florida and you see everything demolished, you see life difficult. It's more difficult in Sanibel Island and Fort Myers Beach. But, if you're inland, Orlando, everyone got some kind of damage, more so on that southwestern portion of the state. But how effective is Ron DeSantis being? And you got to think that this guy is running for governor. In less than 2 months, people in Florida will be voting. I can't think that this is helping Ron DeSantis. I hope it's not. Charlie Crist, who's the Democrat who used to be a Republican, who used to be governor, may not be the best guy, but I know this. He's better than Ron DeSantis. And I just think we don't know the polls still. Some polls still show DeSantis up, beating Crist in Florida. But if Joe Biden goes down there and it's side by side, here's Biden helping out FEMA, helping out with the citizens of Florida, and there's Ron DeSantis doing nothing, looking ineffective. I can't see how Ron DeSantis is making out. And I hope this is some kind of boon for Charlie Crist, the Democrat. I know that if Ron DeSantis ever wants to be president and he runs, Donald Trump is in his way. But if DeSantis runs, you'll see some of these clips out showing Biden taking the lead and DeSantis just looking smarmy behind Biden. Like I said, DeSantis is not. I just don't see DeSantis coming up looking good after Hurricane Ian. The stories of people trying to piece their lives back together, the stories of people who don't have insurance, the stories of people who weren't prepared, the stories of people who say, look, we got less than a day's notice to evacuate. Usually we get 72 hours. It's sad. And for those of us who aren't in Florida, who didn't feel the wrath of the storm, this is a there but for fortune moment. Right? This is one of those moments you lay back and you say, be eternally grateful for the life you have and for the fact that you were blessed to have missed that kind of wrath and rage of Hurricane Ian. Because Joe Biden said something interesting today. He said, well, I guess we all know now climate change is for real. Climate change is an issue. And I saw something else today that I don't know if anyone is thinking about. I mean, the New York Times is thinking about it, so people will be thinking about it. I just saw the headline that suggests, do we rebuild this time? Should we rebuild in certain areas this time? Because maybe this is the time we say, that Barrier Island where we had all those businesses and homes, if we're going to have the frequency of these kind of storms, maybe this isn't the time to rebuild. Not this time. I know that people inland, I was talking to some friends in Orlando and reading the things that they're saying in Orlando. Orlando, they just had murky water. They didn't have the kind of destruction. It wasn't a matter of rebuilding. It's more a matter of being prepared and having the resources to make sure that your pumps are working and all that. But no question on inland, if something happened, you'd rebuild. But if you know the waters are rising, if you know that you're going to get these kind of repeated storms, and the storms within the last 5-6 years, there have been a number of them. And all of them, 50, 60 billion. This could be 80 billion. And this is only the fifth worst. Everyone, like I said, in Orlando was talking about when they had damage in the flooded areas, it's because developers put houses in places where there shouldn't be houses. Well, should be the fact. The fact is there. Fort Myers, Sanibel Island, Fort Myers Beach, maybe we don't build to that extent or rebuild to the same extent that we had. Maybe it's time to say this is going to be underwater again in 10 years or 20 years. It's a tough decision. Who makes it? If they don't get the money to rebuild, then they don't. But you see, this is a tough call. And then you have Florida politicians, especially Republicans, playing all sorts of games, saying, oh, we don't want to accept federal money because, you know, they're just going to shove pork. They're going to shove, you know, all this unwanted spending in there. If I'm a Floridian and I heard my representative say that, I heard a congressman, a senator, or a representative say that, they'd be out. I'd be voting them out. But now, when it comes to rebuilding in a place where you shouldn't, I'd want some kind of compensation. Put me somewhere. Pay for my land. If I can't rebuild, pay for my land. Where do I go? Inland? Are you going to send me to Montana? Send me to some other place? You know, this is one of those issues that no one wants to talk about. But I'm glad I got a sense when I read that headline, as I was just going through the things that I read before I come on here, maybe it's time we don't rebuild. And maybe the hurricane was a way to suggest, nah, we don't rebuild here. Just a thought. Just a thought. Believe me, the hurricane news is going to keep on coming. It's not going away. If it does, we need to remind ourselves, because people are going to be without power. They're going to be without their homes for a long, long time. They're going to need help for a long time. It could be months. It's not like we're back. And hopefully the time will give us the space that we need to try to make the best decisions going forward. Because if climate change gets worse, if the storms get worse, does it make sense after massive destruction to rebuild at all? So that's all the hurricane talk. I mean, it's so sad. I'm glad that my friends in Orlando are fine. Some people I stayed with when I performed there at the Orlando Fringe years ago. But it's just sad. Sad. Okay, so we're talking about Florida. Let me talk about Filipino American history and this Lorenzo Dow case, because it's an important case. And, you know, I brought it up in my column in the Inquirer.net, and also on the ALDEF blog, the Asian American Legal Defense and Education Fund. It's just a friend of mine a couple months ago told me about this case. Lorenzo Dow, he said. Now, you know, I've mentioned it here, but I actually I verified it with, you know, by going into the legal research. I'm not much of a legal researcher, but I can say, show me US v. Dow. And here's Roger Taney in 1840 deciding on a case of Dow, who was a Filipino. The prisoner was a native of the town of Manila. They misspell it, Manilla, in one of the Philippine islands. But his parents were both Malays living in that town and subjects of the Queen of Spain, that they were Christians, and that the prisoner was baptized and educated in the Christian religion and had always professed to be a Christian. Now that's significant, because Taney was trying to determine if the conviction that was given to this man, Lorenzo Dow, was legitimate. Lorenzo Dow, once again, on October 31st, let's see if I get the right date. October 31st, he was on a ship called the Francis in Maryland. And let's see, I'm going to find the right site. He was on the ship, and he was found to have murdered, or he was accused of murdering the captain of the ship, of the Francis, and he was there with other crew members. Oh, Emil, come on. I got to get the summary of that. It happened in October. Halloween. How about that? Happy Halloween. The 31st day of October, 1839. Being on board a certain brig called the Francis on the high seas on the Atlantic. Latitude 33. Out of the jurisdiction of any particular state and within the jurisdiction of the United States. That was at issue, but they said he was in Maryland, under the jurisdiction of Maryland. But this is an issue. The prisoner could not be regarded as a Christian white person, and therefore the testimony was admissible against him. He was on this ship. The witnesses were 2 free Negroes and 1 free mulatto. And the question was their testimony against Dow legitimate? Dow's defense was, no, you can't take the testimony of these people. And Taney rules that while the testimony of the freed blacks and the mulatto could not be used against a white Christian, they could be used, or the testimony could be used against a person of color, even if he was a Christian. And this is Taney's logic. This was in 1840. Taney's logic was, well, this guy was a Malay. He said he was from Madagascar. He said, but, places in Asia, people could be slaves. And if you could be slave at your port of origin, you could be slave anywhere else. That's an assumption. And you're a person of color. And while you can't testify against a white Christian, well, you can testify against each other. That was Taney's ruling. And the justification for all this is that, as Taney said, the only question we have to figure out is if this guy Dow, Lorenzo Dow, was a Christian white person, and he was not. And since he was not, he doesn't have the privileges that Christian white people had. And, this opinion written by Taney in 1840 kind of lays it out. I mean, it's pretty astonishing. He justified it by saying, well, colonists were all of the white race and all professed the Christian religion. And no persons but white men professing the Christian religion could be expected to immigrate to Maryland. And if any person of a different color had come into the colony, they would not at that time have been recognized as an equal by the colonists or deemed worthy of participating with them in the privileges of this community. This is a legal opinion by the same judge, Roger Taney, who then later ruled in 1857 on Dred Scott. And Dred Scott's his case where Scott was suing to be a free person in Missouri. But so this Taney thing, it gets even, I mean, it goes on for a number of paragraphs saying that how people of color were disqualified from being witnesses against Christian white men. No one who belonged to either of the races of which slaves could be made was allowed to be a witness where anyone was concerned who belonged to the race of which the masters were composed. And that's, an idea, the master. It's clear. This is master race, white supremacy kind of ideas. 1840. Judge Roger Taney in the U.S. v. Dow case. And then he rules against Dow, upholds the conviction, 1840. Actually, what happens to Dow later is that Dow's case is he's pardoned. He's pardoned by the president, according to the follow-up. And he was, the prisoner was re-indicted and tried, found guilty. Sentence of death was passed upon him, but he was subsequently pardoned by the president of the United States. So that is Lorenzo Dow's story. And Lorenzo Dow, of course, was on that ship, the Francis, where he was accused of murder, October 31st, 1839. October, which makes him a prime, well, it's another reason why Filipino American History Month is October. Now you say, Emil, come on. He's not Filipino American. All right, 1839. How many Filipino Americans were there? I guess there were some Filipinos in North America in 1839, but he was a Filipino in America serving on an American flagship and then tried in America for murder and convicted in America. I think that counts enough for Filipino American history. October 31st, 1839. And then the U.S. v. Dow case is the opinion written by Roger Taney, 1840. And like I said, the real significance of that 1840 case is that it was used to justify the racist ruling that Dred Scott could not sue to be a free man in Missouri, 1857. And of course, you know, that was the beginning of the spark that set off abolitionists, that set off the calls for, you know, that really began the rumbling of the Civil War. Dred Scott. Terrible decision. And as I write in the ALDEF blog, I bring it to mind because it's a little known case. Hey, this is October. It is the start of the new session of the Supreme Court, where we welcome Judge Katanji Brown Jackson. Boy, she's trying. She's out there advocating for us. She was advocating for voting rights the other day, just at the hearing. We'll see what they say. There's going to be another hearing coming up soon on affirmative action. We'll see how she stands up to the forces that are trying to reverse or do away with affirmative action. But as I said in my piece, this is not a good Supreme Court for us, this new 2022 version. And in fact, I say, if you think it's bad now, you should have seen it in 1857, where 7-2 was kind of the racist line. Now, you know, 5-4 if it's close, 6-3 if it's sort of according to party line. 7-2. That was the ruling on Dred Scott, 1857. All right, so check out the column on the ALDEF blog, also on Inquirer.net. Filipino American history is all month. But I like the fact that, you know, some people are reading it and they're coming to me and they're saying, come on, Emil. Someone said, I can't find this law. I can't find the site. Tell me where you found it. I said, well, here it is. Truthfully, a friend of mine was an historian, and he told me about it. And like I said, I mentioned it here. And it's just startling when you see the evolution of these laws, the precedents, the cases that came before. And it's important, just like, you know, look at what defeated Roe. We should have thought that there was enough, right? Settled law. This is settled law, but now we don't get that extravagance when the court is stacked against us. So I do want to mention Percy Lapid, known as Percy Lapid, better known perhaps, or at least known as Percival Mabasa, his formal name, killed on Monday night. He was a news radio host, prominent critic of Ferdinand Marcos Jr., not just all of Marcos and all of the Duterte record, but he was shot in his car during an ambush near his home on Monday night. The National Police said 2 men on motorcycles. 2 men on motorcycles who later escaped. Of course they did. And it happened in the suburb of Las Piñas, outside the gated community where Mr. Mabasa lived. They've got a manhunt underway, but they don't know. They don't know about motive. Like I said, Ferdinand Marcos Jr. Bong Bong said he wants to investigate. He's going to investigate. But like, to me, it sounds like OJ saying, I'm going to find the real killers. I'm going to find the real killers. I've seen a lot of activity on Twitter, Filipino Twitter, calling to sign petitions. Petitions aren't a bad idea. I think we just got to keep talking about it. We got to keep talking about it, letting people know that we're trying to prevent the second coming of a Marcos dictatorship in the Philippines. And Marcos should be smart enough to know that he's not going to get away with it. But we are dealing with the second journalist killed in the country within the first 100 days. This is according to the National Union of Journalists of the Philippines. Last month, you had another radio broadcaster, Ray Blanco, stabbed to death, Central Philippines. So it's happening all over. And this report I'm reading from New York Times, I read it yesterday. Nothing new has happened except more people are hearing about it. More people are outraged. More people are scared because this is give them an inch, they take a mile kind of thing, right? You get two journalists dead, first 100 days. Just see how many they can get away with. I mean, I think you have to keep this in the forefront because you saw how buddy Marcos was with Tony Blinken a couple of weeks ago, how buddy he was bong with Biden at the UN. And we don't need another Marcos Reagan Bush type of relationship. We need someone in America who will hold Marcos's feet to the fire on issues like this. I mean, there's a mutual use thing where they need each other, the U.S. and the Philippines, somewhat. Still need those bases. But I don't know if the Philippines needs us more than we need them. I mean, I want to side with the nationalists. I think the nationalists have a point. They should stand on their own, but there's some benefit in this U.S.-Philippine relationship too. Being right there in Asia, close, so we can come to respond to anything that happens in Asia. And mind you, if you haven't noticed, things are happening in Asia right now. Kim Jong-un setting off those missiles. He can go to Guam. He can go beyond Guam now. And now point the missiles in any direction. What can he reach? I think they don't cover it that much here in America, aside from the fact that, hey, North Korea set off a missile, Japan's a little antsy, South Korea, they're doing a drill. Now there's a lot of activity. Lots of mistakes can happen. Asia's heating up. And Bong Bong has been noticed again. And I think this is one of the problems. Because when Daddy Marcos left, and it was people power, I think a lot of people, like, the Philippines was off the radar. No one cared about the Philippines. And everyone just thought, oh, well, it's going to be all right now. The good guys won. And it wasn't that way. It wasn't that way where the good guys won. And so I think now it's actually good that Bong Bong is acting like a, well, I don't know who killed Percy Mabasa, a.k.a. Percy Lapid. But it can't be a coincidence. I just hope they keep looking for the people who perpetrated the crime. But this being the second killing in 100 days, in the first 100 days of the Marcos regime, well, let's not call it a regime. First 100 days of the Marcos government, I think the United States has every reason to just be cautious and make sure that we are dealing with someone honorable in Malacanang Palace. And these actions that are happening, I'm not saying whose actions they are, but the fact that they're happening is putting the Philippines in the spotlight again. And to that degree, we should hold them accountable to make sure that whoever perpetrated the shooting deaths of these two journalists are caught. That's the kind of pressure the United States, the government, Filipino Americans, because this, in a strange way, it's not a strange way, but it's Filipino American history. The relationship between something goes wrong in the Philippines and how it impacts a big Filipino American population, 4 million people here in the United States, millions more throughout the world through the diaspora. But just concentrating on Filipino American history, this is an important moment. And we have to make sure we keep that light shining, because anytime you get dead journalists within the first months of a new administration in the Philippines, that is serious. We don't want another Marcos regime. All right, so let me finish up on the vaccine thing. I started with the vaccine. It's important because I'm telling you, I pick up this story in Grid, and the Omicron booster rollout, they say, has been a dud. And the headline is, most Americans don't know about the Omicron COVID boosters, spelling trouble for the coming winter. And they're blaming muddled messaging and pandemic weariness maybe behind the trend. I'll tell you, I scheduled it as soon as I could. I had to time it because I want it to peak right at the time when I'm going to be traveling. And I want to make sure that I get as much protection as my booster will give me, my 5th shot. But according to this story, only 7.6 million Americans, that's less than 4% of those eligible, have received the shot so far. 7.6 million and one. I'm the one. I got it yesterday. It hurt me because I was dealing with a I know. I think the woman got her phlebotomist certificate from the Little Shop of Horrors Academy. I mean, she was banging away at that. Anyway, 7.6 million Americans. That's less than 4% of those eligible, according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. So that's the thing. You start listening to the CDC, they've lost all credibility. And I think they just don't want to create any more problems than they have. So they're on the retreat, right? Which is sad, because this is when they should be saying, come on, get your fifth booster, get your fourth if you haven't, get a shot if you haven't. I mean, a lot of people are just waiting, but according to this Kaiser Family Foundation data, 2/3 of adults don't plan on getting the updated shot anytime soon. So we have less than 4% eligible, and we have 2/3 of adults telling these Kaiser Family Foundation survey folks that they don't want the shot. They're not getting the shot. And like I said, I know some smart people who are saying, oh, I'm not going to get the shot because I want to wait. Well, you wait, you get sick, and this is the person sticking the needle in my arm yesterday said, well, I've already had COVID. That's what she says to me. So we're immune. Yeah, partially. Who knows what's coming up? I said, give me the fifth shot. I want the fifth shot. And that's it. I just think it doesn't hurt. My arm's there's still a little pain. But the better for me to practice my meditation. I don't, I lean in, break up the pain. I'm all right. The most important thing is I'm not going to get COVID. And then she says to me, the phlebotomist, she says, well, we're all going to get it. They say we're all going to get it. And I say to her, I'm not going to get it. You can get it one time, two times, maybe three times. I'm not going to get it. I'm going to vax up. I'm going to mask up. I'm going to fight it. This is a fight. This is like going into the ring without your gloves and without you got to put on that little helmet. I mean, I'm not a pro, but I'm fighting this. According to this Kaiser Family Foundation story, about half of adults have gotten the original booster, but its protection wanes after 6 months. So that booster's no good. About a quarter of adults, remain unvaccinated. And they're probably all at the football games that you see on TV, I mean, that scares me. I see all the games and they show the crowd, open air, and I say, oh, God, I guess it's open air. They're fine. They're a little too close for comfort for me. And I think you got cases already upticking in Western Europe. You got what they call new flavors of Omicron. It is Omicron, not Omicron, Omicron. And, add that to the sluggish booster campaign. We could be vulnerable for the winter. So this article talked to Peter Hotez. You saw him. He's the guy from Houston, Texas Children's Hospital, vaccine department, vaccine development, the guy with the bow tie. You used to always see him. Hardly ever see him now. We don't see Dr. Jha anymore. Hardly ever see him. Here's Peter Hotez. He says, I would say I'm disappointed, but that's not quite the right word because being disappointed implies you had high expectations in the first place. Touche. Hey, we're fighting this fight. I mean, we're in a war. This is a war that no one wants to fight. So if you're fighting it, God love you. God bless you. Go out there with all the masks that no one else is buying. Take all the vaccines. I'm taking all the vaccines. And I'll take all the other things that you won't have to get in case I get it. But, I think the federal government got a little gun shy because they just blew it. And if I have a criticism about Biden, it's just that he's kind of, when he said the pandemic is not over. The pandemic is not over. It's not over. Here's Hotez. He says, the limited data available today is showing that against Omicron subvariants, the original booster's protection against hospitalization seems to go down quite a bit, from 80 to 30 or 40%. He said the current bivalent boosters, which target multiple strains of COVID, should help restore that protection, but that hasn't been clearly and consistently communicated by public health officials, said Hotez, who said, quote, another big mistake was the president saying twice on 60 Minutes that the pandemic was over. It's not over. It's not over. Some more facts, because, we always can use facts. The muddled messaging has left many older Americans unsure about whether they need the new booster. Nearly 40% of those 65 and over have only heard a little or nothing at all about the updated shots, according to the Kaiser Family Foundation. I mean, the people over 65, you need to hear about this. I'm happy to provide the public service. I'm telling you. I'm telling you about the shots. Just over 40% expressed uncertainty over whether they even qualified for the shot. You qualify. Trust me, you qualify. The picture is even worse for those under 65, with about half of the public having heard little to nothing about the boosters. Get the booster. Get someone who, just don't go to the person I went to who, like I said, seemed to have gone to the Little Shop of Horrors school of phlebotomy, the way she jabbed me. But she made up for it a little bit. The second go round was better. But I'm just saying, I'd rather experience this pain than the pain of long-term COVID. I mean, I don't think anyone wants that, right? No one wants long-term COVID. No one wants long-term COVID. And that, my friends, will do it today. We got into a lot of things. I talked about getting vaxxed, a little about Ron DeSantis. Oh, before I go, I got to congratulate Aaron Judge. You know Aaron Judge, the New York Yankee, Mr. Pinstripe, 6'7", 280, is he? Number 99, because he is from California's 209, went to Fresno State, from a little town outside of Stockton. That's why he's got Highway 99 on his back. I call him Mr. 209. I mean, he's Mr. 209. No, that's Formula 409. That's the cleanser. No, he's Mr. 209 because this is the area code of Aaron Judge. And, I thought to myself that the 209 gets short shrifted a lot. I mean, it's in a parallel universe to the coastal cities, San Francisco, LA. I mean, a 209 is huge. I mean, there were no people. So 209 is like from like Sacramento all the way down to like south of Fresno. Huge area. No people, but they're adding another prefix. I mean, that's what I heard. I forget the number, but they're adding another prefix to 209 because more people have cell phones, more people. I guess, when I started working in the 209, I still have a 415 number. And people say, oh, 415, you want to be a snob, is that it? No, it's not that. It's just I don't want to keep changing my. I've had the same number for years. But I think it's true. You got a 209 number. It's kind of a not good. I mean, it's seen as a like a put down. That's why I call Aaron Judge Mr. 209, because he's from here. He's our shining example. And not that we necessarily need an excuse for self-love, but if you need one, Aaron Judge, all 6'8" of them. I just hope he gets his, as they say in sports, his bag of money. I hope he gets his $40 million a year over 10 years, 400 million. He'd be worth it. He would be worth it, because robots aren't playing this game. You still need human beings. You still need exemplars who aren't tainted by drugs and PEDs, people who are authentic, people who are real. Aaron Judge is a modern baseball player. And if you don't get Aaron Judge, bring back Shohei Ohtani. I'm talking about the San Francisco Giants, because Ohtani's great too. But I think I'd rather have Judge, because Judge is an everyday player. And, Ohtani is a pitcher and an everyday player, but, designated hitter. But I don't know. I just, there's something about, all right, because this is an Asian American oriented show. Yeah, Ohtani would be the consolation. But I like Judge because Judge is from Northern California. And he's already a giant. He needs to be a giant. He needs to be a giant. Okay, that's our show for today. Hey, look, you know how this show works. I read the news. I talk. It's a talk show. I'm like a woke Rush Limbaugh. I mean, I'm definitely woker. I mean, it's not a show where, I necessarily tell jokes. This is because I mean, it would be a waste, because, I couldn't hear your laughter anyway. But you could hear it. You can say, oh, I attest, I laughed at him. I laughed at him today in the privacy of my own home. But the way to listen to the show is just go to Facebook, fb.com, facebook.com/emilguillermo.media. You can see all the shows there. Go to YouTube, my pathetic YouTube channel. Just go there, like it, subscribe. I'm trying to break double digits, but the show's there. You can watch it live at 2 p.m. when I'm doing this, or you can just go there anytime and play the replay. Twitter. Are you a Twitter fan? Are you still going to be a Twitter fan once Elon Musk? I mean, he's going to buy it at the original price, so he's just dicking around. I don't know. The problem with social media is it's for real, and it's important, and it's the digital grassroots, and you can poo-poo it and say, oh, insignificant, but it's significant. And not just the good guys know how significant it is, but the bad guys do too. And for many people, they look at social media, they see it as an evil when people put out false stuff, not real, inauthentic stuff. So it's important. I mean, we're at a critical stage in our democracy, and whatever happens with the midterms, social media, man, very, very important. The fact that Elon Musk is going to buy Twitter, I don't know if that's good or bad, but it shows you where the power is. I mean, he's not saying, I'm going to buy Netflix. He's not saying, I'm going to buy Facebook. He's not saying, I'm going to buy. I mean, he'd buy TikTok. They're owned by the Chinese. But social media, more valuable than the real media. That's the astonishing thing. More important, more significant. So anyway, on Twitter, we're at Emil Amok, EMIL-AMOK. Also catch all the replays on amok.com, amok.com. Before we go, quick mention. I'm in this play. I have one big speech. And the play is called The Conductor. It is at the theater for the newcity.net. It's a stage reading taking place October 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th. And it's virtual, so you can be anywhere. You can be in Barclay Square. You could be in Zanzibar. You could be with Patty Duke. I don't think you can be with Patty Duke. Wherever she is now. Remember that show? No, I'm dating myself now. But it's virtual. Tickets are $18. Theater for the newcity.net. The Conductor. It's a play by Ishmael Reed. It is, as a staged reading, I think you'll find it fascinating. I honestly do. The Conductor. Catch it. October 13th through 16th. Theater for the newcity.net. All right. So, regular listeners of the program know that what I like to do is I like to meditate. I find that meditating helps put me in the moment. It helps keeping me from dwelling on the past, on negative things. And it keeps me focused on right here, right now. And when I'm in the here and now, I'm fine. I'm not dwelling on the past. I'm creating new stories all the time. And I'm not thinking about the future, because if I think about the future, then I stumble right here where I am. And this show has helped. Doing this show live has helped at 2:00 Pacific, but also just meditation. It's helped. There's some new studies out. Study took place in the summer of 2022. So that 90% of people believe that there is a mental health problem in the U.S. But a lot of people say they couldn't do anything about it because there was, I think, 60% said there was a stigma attached. We're still at stigma. There's no stigma. But I'll tell you something that's helpful. I think meditation, catching yourself, being still, it's been helpful. Helpful for me. And so, I mean, the thing about meditation, it's not what you think. And if you want to know more, drop me a line. I'll help you. I'll tell you who the good teachers are. We'll sit and chat. We'll sit and meditate quietly, in quiet. Find out where presence is. Help ourselves. The thing about meditation is it's the way to get into self-love. A way to understand that to overcome your feelings of, inadequacy, your feelings of not being right, feelings of shame. Man, loving self-kindness meditation helps me. And so, as I wish for me, I wish for you. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. And may you live with ease. Emil Guillermo here. Back again tomorrow. 2 p.m. Pacific Live. Same bat time, same bat channel. Till then. Mahal kita.